Hello and welcome to the Brandon times Ruby 100% real with anti-fitness wankery. And a lot of this fitness wankery, I guess, can easily be triggered by what we see online because we compare ourselves, our rate of progress to what others are doing. And I have this saying that we usually usually when we're comparing, we're already in a state of picking ourselves apart or not feeling like we're doing enough. We're not getting anywhere fast enough. Our progress is too slow. So then we compare however we feel. Even this can even be when you're in your lowest of lows in your PMS cycle. So, well, I should say period cycle, but you usually are in a lower state when you're in a position of comparing yourself. Like if you're too busy living your life and feeling really good, you're not really going to be comparing yourself to anyone else. You know this as a fact. So when you are comparing yourself, this is where these thoughts come up. This is where we can emotionally react. And this is where I like to say, if your emotions win, you lose. But if you can bring the logic into it, which is a skill, and it's not something that you just develop, and it's not something that you'll learn within a week. And it's not going from being emotionally reactive to all of a sudden you're logical. It's still being emotionally reactive, but having more awareness around how you react. It's having less shame, less judgment around how you react. That's the next stage. Then the third stage is getting curious about it. Then the next stage is using that curiosity to start tracing it back, which you would have heard in my last podcast with Dal, that the clients that I find are the ones who succeed the most, the ones that are making amazing progress with me, are actually the ones that are doing the work and feeling the feelings and tracing them back and wondering why they do what they do. Because if it was as simple as just following a meal plan and following a training program, everyone would have results. But not only that, it's confusing when you're seeing a whole bunch of things online. Why are they getting progress faster? X, Y, Z. So then we think that what they're doing is what got them to their goals. Let's not mention the GLP-1s and the PEDs and the Photoshop and the AI and all this other stuff that can make things even more difficult, that make us think that, oh, well, what even is realistic? Maybe I do need to take this, that, and the other. But the goal is to keep the goal, which is something that Brandon said before I clicked record. And emotions have a great way of sabotaging our goals, both in emotional eating, but also in the way that we approach our training, because it's so easy to go into sensations. You feel like more is better. So then you add on a fifth day. And then there's a worry, oh, but if I'm eating this much, this is a great way to start it actually too, because I liked what you were going on, but this is a great way. If I'm eating this much and I'm training 5 days a week, and then on the sixth day, I'm doing XYZ, seventh day, I'm still active, I'm getting XYZ in, then how does it make sense that I need to stop eating 1,500 calories, reduce my training days to 4 days from 5 days? How does that logically make sense? Let's start from there.
Yeah. Okay, good. Reducing training frequency and volume and increasing your calories so you can build some muscle, build that body that you want. So I like to describe this like we're renovating a house. I'm going to knock out a wall so that I can expand this room, and that means I'm going to have to do some building. All right, let me go ahead and knock out that wall. And then, all right, the builders are in there, they're doing their thing, and you come in and you knock out another wall. But they didn't finish the first one yet. And then you knock out another one. Your body isn't growing while you're in the gym. You're providing a stimulus. And you're really not damaging things per se, like the whole micro tears and thing. Like that's still debatable. But you are providing a stimulus. Now, if you're doing too much, you probably are doing some damage. So, oops, we hit the sewer line. We're going to have to repair that along the way as well. Okay. And then we're also not going to bring you any building materials, or at least not enough of them. So like you're looking at this house and you're like, this thing is a wreck. Why aren't you guys doing your job? And it's because you kept knocking out walls and you still haven't brought us the wood that we need and the materials that we need to rebuild. Your body is very much the same way. It doesn't grow while you're in the gym. It grows while you're resting. It needs adequate sleep. It needs adequate intake. Your muscles, outside of your newbie gains, like your first year, maybe second year of training, if you've got great genetics, you're not going to build any added muscle without being in a little bit of a surplus. Sorry, without being in a little bit of a surplus. Uh, and that doesn't mean that you're going to gain a ton of body fat, but you have to gain some. You have to be okay with it. And then like, okay, well, how long is a muscle gain phase? And I'm sure I think we've gone over this, in terms of like how long a phase will last. But man, it's at least a year. It's not 6 weeks of. I was listening to some strength coaches, kind of talk about like, oh, we do an anatomic adaptation phase, a hypertrophy phase, and then we do a strength phase. It's like your hypertrophy phase is 6 weeks long. Like that that's nothing. That's not a
Can I
hypertrophy
just
phase. That's a
this goes into the emotions thing, sorry, because I feel like
yeah. Sorry.
when you interject as well, but this is really important because it's very easy to believe that these phases, the way that this is why I hate the question, what phase am I in? There's no such thing as actual phases because everything kind of flows into each other. It's just, okay, cool. Training is always going to be like this flow of things. The only difference is once we get to a position, which is not going to be within 12 months, it's going to be past 12 months. We then put you into a effective deficit. Well, I mean, like, yeah, okay, cool. You can do 6 months and then we put you into a deficit. That's great. But do you actually want to see results this time? Because I can give you what you want, but I can give you what you want in terms of actions. But if what you want in terms of body composition, if what has been holding you back this whole time has been always reverting to dieting, or you need to do this phase and this phase and this phase, people are throwing fancy names out there. You're just going to keep yourself stuck in the same fancy cycle. That goes back to the emotional thing too.
Yeah, that also kind of taps into the idea that like, and I tell people this all the time, the more complicated your program is, the less effective it is. Like they look for fancy, look for big names. What was one that I saw? It was so dumb. It was let me try and think of the word. I think it was auto-regulated progressive overload was at least a part of the term, and they described it as like, well, you have to watch the kid, and if it's not moving well, then you reduce the weight. It's like that's just coaching. Like that's just being a coach. That's what you do as a coach. Is if they're not doing a good job with the weight, it's too heavy, and if they're doing a great job with the weight, it's too light. Like that's just coaching. This whole like auto-regulated. That's very funny.
Okay. Question then.
Yeah.
Because there's programs out there, like we see there's a lot of apps now. There's AI.
Mm.
Why is it so important to have this coaching eye with this? Okay, we're going to actually put you in the path of progress, because this also leads to the emotional stuff, because you're not going to know what you don't know, and most of us, we only know the constraints of what we know, and that's why the coach comes in. And we're not living in 2016 2010 anymore, where it was hire a coach for weight loss. Like, yeah, okay, cool, that you can go teach a man to fish, that one, but this is different. This is real coaching. This is coaching through training, coaching through health. I would argue that having a coach for the majority of your time is probably the best investment you can make, because that saves on so much more. It's not just here's a program. It's not just here's your macros.
But and you could look at that too as like, if I can come back to my house analogy, imagine having nobody like for oversight. Imagine having no boss. It's just a bunch of dudes doing stuff, right? There's no organization. There's no plan. There's no like this person is doing their one thing and they don't see that it's interfering with this one thing. You need somebody to have a plan for you, and you can't be objective in yourself. Like Dunning-Kruger is pretty clear that we're pretty bad at self-assessment. The less we know about something, the more we think we know, because we don't know enough about it to realize that we don't know very much about it. So there's an inverse relationship between confidence and competence. And that's not an insult or anything. That's not telling somebody they're unintelligent. It's just, why would you expect to know a lot about a topic when you don't have 20 years of experience successfully creating change in real humans in the real world? It's not your job. I don't expect my dentist to be a good coach, and I don't expect myself to be a good dentist.
Yeah,
so you need
speaking about
somebody.
humans, it's that connection. I just want to throw in the word connection, because I feel like that connection is something that we're missing, and having that collaboration, it's back and forth. It's checks and balances. You don't just set and forget.
Yeah. Well, and it's an objective third party. That's what you need. You know, you kind of need an arbitrator for your own mind at times, because we're looking at this big picture here, but and this is us, right? But we're looking at it from right here. We can't be objective because we're too close to the picture. For people who aren't watching the video, I put my hands very far apart. Let's say a 6 foot picture, and then you're standing an inch away from it. You can't see the whole picture. It's like sitting way too close in the movie theater, like the front row, but then a row forward from that. That's how you are at self-assessment. So like, can you do it? Sure, you can watch a movie like that. Will you get the most out of it? Not by a long shot, because you don't have a really clear image. You have a really clear image of like a few of the pixels on the screen, and that's great. But if you want that whole picture, you need somebody who can see the whole picture and who has been trained to see the whole picture, and who has proven themselves that they're able to see the whole picture with multiple different people living multiple different lifestyles, multiple different bodies, genetics, mindsets, circumstances. That's where the value of a coach comes in, because they're generally, if you've got a good one, they're going to be experienced with your specific scenario, or at least one close enough to it that they can help you through it because they've successfully helped someone else through that. And I can say, as a coach, I often learn much more from my clients than they learn from me, I think, especially when it comes to how to successfully make change. Oftentimes, when I'm giving advice, it came from, well, here's how another client successfully navigated that exact challenge. Would you like to hear that? You're not going to get that if you're by yourself. So it helps to have somebody there to guide you, to keep you on track, to help to help prevent the ADHD taking over and like, oh, now I want to go do that thing. Oh, now I want to go do that thing. Oh, I saw this thing on Instagram. I'm going to try that today. Like, I think one of the leading causes of a lack of progress is training for vibes, training by feel, training by like coolness. Like, I just like to bench. Cool. Do you have a plan for progression? Do you know how that
you actually asked a question right before you said this, because I feel like we need to try to get some direction in this podcast episode, because we need to think about, it's like we want to make something that actually relates to you, instead of just like rambling on about crap that is like, okay, cool, well, I'm just going to tune out of this because I don't actually understand what the hell we're talking about. So something you said is, what do you actually want to get out of it? And a lot of people are like, I want to have this shapely body. And then the way they go about it is still using the scale as a metric of progress, using the burny feels of my glutes. I feel them burning. Or I don't look forward to lower body days because I am absolutely wrecked afterwards. I train my ass off. And then you look at the program and it's got like 1 billion reps, 1 billion sets, 1 billion burnouts. Like, yeah, okay, cool. That's exhausting you. But it feels like it's working. It feels like, oh my God, I'm training so freaking hard. I should see results with this. But then going back to the house analogy, are you actually sleeping enough of this? Are you actually feeding your glute growth? Because I can bring in where emotions held me back. And I was training really hard. I was eating quite a lot, but that was a lot in context of what I thought was a lot. And that goes back to the whole, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah, okay, cool. I thought it was a lot, but it wasn't enough for the work that I was doing. It wasn't enough for the growth that I wanted to see. And this is kind of where you brought this up before as well, where what you're doing doesn't, like, you can pick out your behaviors in the past that you think have worked for you. But if you emotionally connect yourself to it instead of zooming out and doing a proper evaluation, then you're able to see, oh, okay, well, I've been always going back into diets every single time summer comes, or every single time that I feel like I've built enough muscle, I went back into a diet. And to be honest, I never really saw what I wanted to see. But then when you're in the moment of the emotions, it's almost like we don't have that hindsight anymore. We're too busy in our feels. And it's not in the positive way, because we haven't learnt to emotionally regulate this kind of stuff before, which is kind of what I was saying to Brennan before, where sometimes it's not what we like. I don't get cravings, but sometimes we don't have emotional regulation. So it's not more so you're eating things out of a craving sense. It's there are all these heightened emotions. There's your environment, which is something else we touched on. You have control over your environment, which can make things easier for you. The thing is, do you choose to alter your environment, or is there something else holding you back? I had a conversation with someone actually where she kept thinking that she'll be able to control herself this time with the chocolate, with the snacks. So she'll keep allowing herself to buy it, but every single time she couldn't control herself. But in the heat of the moment, she tells herself that, no, I can control it this time. Okay, this is where we need to pause and ask ourselves, what is it that we really want? Going back to keep the goal the goal. What do you actually want to get out of it? And yes, it's going to be hard. Why do you feel like you need the chocolate to get through? Why do you feel like you need X in order to feel or experience Y, when history has told you, no, this isn't working? Is it out of you don't know how to set boundaries? Is it that you think it needs to be that way forever? Is it that you think you know as a fact how hard it is because you've experienced the hard, but do you feel like that needs to be forever? What is it that is getting in the way? Do you even believe you're worth it? That is a huge part that comes up a lot. It's the worth it question too. Because if we don't see that we're worth the effort, we're not going to put in the effort. Like, it's easy to say you need to have the discipline and blah, 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 which I completely wholeheartedly agree with. But it's hard to get to that disciplined state unless we address what beliefs, what thought patterns, what is coming up for you. This is where that true evaluation comes in from, which is very hard to do without a coach bringing in that coach element. Having this discussion with someone who knows how to communicate. Most coaches don't. They just dictate. Most parents don't, because that generation, like way back then, people didn't know how to communicate. They tried to fix things. They dictated, they helicoptered. Although, like, it's very rare to have the adults of like the 40s and 50s, unless they've done work on themselves, or even the 60s, unless they've done work on themselves to know how to communicate. Like, hell, even people my age and Brandon's age, a lot of us don't know how to communicate. Well, we do. A lot of them don't know how to communicate. They don't ask the questions. They just.
Well, I definitely have my moments. I fail.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we all have our moments, but it's about getting curious. The more curious you get without that shame, and when the shame does come up, getting curious about why there is shame there, where does it come from, and what stories you need to start believing and telling yourself. That is probably going to be the best thing here. And also the bright spot audit that you mentioned. What are the wins that you are missing? Because I hear this so many times, and I know you do as well, Brandon, because it's innately human. We can be doing some good things, but we don't allow ourselves to celebrate them, because what's the point? We end up doing X anyway. And I hear this a lot of times.
Yeah. I want to come. That's actually bringing me back to what we were talking about before we hit record, and I was taking notes so I wouldn't forget my order of operations here. But first, I want to come back to the like training based on vibes and training based on like, oh, I feel it burning, or like, oh, it must have worked because I'm sore. Like, I can make you sore and I can make you tired. I can chase you around the parking lot and I have a baseball bat. If we're gonna go by soreness, I can make you the most sore and the most tired. But making you better is different. You don't have to be crippled to see progress. You will be sore on occasion. You don't have to be crippled. But using soreness as a metric for success, that's not how this works. This is not a brute force game. But I want to come back to the self-control by proxy and the self-talk. So let's start there. The self-talk. You were talking about the like, I'll just mess up again, kind of idea. And that's where, like, okay, let me provide some actionable steps for people struggling with this, because that might be one of the biggest failure points for a lot of people, or one of the biggest struggles rather, that's hampering them. It's hampering their progress, is the self-talk of like, well, it didn't work, it's going to keep not working, whatever, or I can't do this, or like brute forcing their self-control. Like, that's not how this works. it is a stimulus response game. So we can't just brute force self-control. So let's start with the self-talk. Like the typical thing is like, oh, it's not good enough, or maybe you saw a little progress, but it wasn't enough. And it's catch that thought and let's just CBT the thing. Like catch that thought, examine it, check if it's actually accurate for one, and two, separate it out from your assessment of it. Like, oh, it's not fast enough. What is fast enough? Is any movement at all bad? Is that bad? Like that's your assessment. Like it's too slow. I'm a failure. Are you though? Like you just made progress. I didn't jump from kindergarten to a college graduate. Like that process takes time. There is no rushing this. And I was saying this earlier before we started the record, is like this is very much like a plant. You can't force a plant to grow faster. All you can do is provide it the stimulus and cultivate the environment. You can give it the right soil, the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, and it will grow. But you can't force that. There is no like quick grow magic formula, at least not that I'm aware of. Science is crazy, but let me just stick with the basic analogy here. Plants grow at the rate they grow. You grow at the rate you grow. You lose body fat at the rate you lose body fat, unless you want to also sacrifice lean tissue and bone density and, I don't know, quality of life. I'm sure you probably don't want to do that. So examine that thought, take it apart, challenge it. Like, well, actually, I did see progress. Okay. So if we were to keep going, you would continue to see progress. And for every single like thought you have that is challenging your process, that's challenging you, that's telling you you're not enough or you're not good enough or it's not working fast enough, for every single one of those, like you need to get the reps in. I drew this little picture to remind myself of like a seesaw or a scale. Like one side is all of these negative thoughts. They're very heavy because you have a lot of them. We're geared to think negatively because it protected us in the past. Now it doesn't. So here's your scale, right? Or here's your scale, right? So like this heavy side is all these negative thoughts. If you get enough of these positive reps in, they will eventually outweigh the negative, but it takes more. For every one negative, you need about 5 positives to outweigh it. So okay, let me write down 5 reasons that's not true, or just write the same reason that maybe there's a more nuanced interpretation of that thought, but write it 5 times. And literally write it with your hand. That does something in the brain that's very different from typing it out or just saying it aloud. Though saying it aloud is great. Writing it down will help solidify this a lot better. So if you're really serious, and I think people who are listening to this podcast are, write some stuff down. Don't write down just your struggles, write down the struggle and then break it apart into the observation and your assessment of the observation. And separate those two out and let's focus on just the specific observation, the specific, these are the facts, these are the things that occurred.
Can I also just interject there, because you mentioned somewhere in there that, yeah, did you see results? But I think this can also be a trap for someone, because it was for me as well, where you will always see results at first, but you already know, like you can do any program in the world. You can starve yourself while training really hard and still build muscle because you're a newbie, but then that stops. And then you'll actually need to feed yourself if you want to see more results. You can do junk volume to the nth degree, see a shit ton of results and think that you're still making a lot of progress because it feels effective and you saw progress before. So let's just keep doing that because it's worked before. That is something to bring up as well, because no, just because it worked before doesn't mean it's going to continue working if you don't actually have the logic there and you don't have those conversations. Because I see so many people. Oh, another one is what is actually making you believe that to be true? So much out there can confuse you with, okay, well, longevity this, longevity that. We need to train. We have to not train heavy because it's not good for injury risk, or it's not good for your back. Well, why is that information actually getting fed to you? Well, because you're worried about your back and social media. I don't know how many times I've been taught, well, not me, but I'll be talking and then my phone all of a sudden brings up friggin' Google, or it's not Siri, it's Google. And then there are times when Adam's talking and he looks at his phone the next day and all the things that he's been talking about, which have nothing to do with him, are now ads and sponsored this and that he's saying all over his face, well, all over his Instagram, all over his Google. like we attract what we seek. We attract what we speak about most. We attract our beliefs and our thoughts. So inevitably, we are shaping our environment without even knowing. We are shaping our own beliefs. We are influencing the things. It's freaking like 1984, George Orwell. We're influencing the things that then influence us to believe things. So it's a feedback loop that can either serve you or it can work against you. And I would argue that if lifting heavy is something you're avoiding because back injury this, back injury that, or longevity this, you want to have time under tension is so important, but it's not in the way that you think. It's what that time under tension is. Like, where is it that matters? Is it because you're trying to lift weight as fast as possible, but it's moving super slow because they're the last couple of reps of a set? Now, that 5-second rep, that is the time under tension that counts. But if you're talking about a 5-second rep, that's like your first or second rep, and it's not involuntary because you're trying to force it really freaking hard and it's still moving really slow, then I would argue that isn't effective time under tension. Unless you then take that close to failure and you're still getting stronger over time because you haven't. If your RDL today is not stronger than your RDL 6 months ago, you're not building muscle. We said this before as well, but it could still be stronger than 6 months ago if you're in that newbie phase. The real question is it then stronger 12 months from now? And I don't mean 12 months from the start. I mean that 6 months from the prior 6 months mark. Is it stronger there? And are you still able to feel strong in that moving forward? Because if you're not getting stronger, you're either not eating enough food, not eating enough carbs, not eating enough protein, not sleeping enough, not recovering enough. You're doing too much volume. You're doing too much training. You're just not building muscle, full stop. So that's something to keep in mind as well, along with what I mentioned in a prior episode. You can get stronger without building muscle. This is exactly why having a coach is so important. Separating logic from emotion is so important.
Yeah, so I've been drawing a little chart of like you were talking about how like when you're a beginner, like pretty much everything will work, and like you mentioned how it won't take much. You can build muscle and lose fat at the same time at first. And I haven't finished this, but I'm just gonna pull it up and show like there's a line where when you're a beginner. Oh, it's not gonna show it.
You need an angle.
Yeah, I'll just describe it better.
Yeah.
But there's kind of a direct relationship. The more progress you make, the more specific your approach is going to have to be. When you're a beginner, everything kind of works. You can have a decent enough diet and like anything will make progress. But what gets you from point A to point B will not get you to point C or point D or point E. And what gets you to point F won't get you to point G, et cetera, et cetera. The further along you go and the further along you want to go, the smarter you're going to have to be with your approach, and the more committed you'll have to be to sticking to things that take longer. There comes a time where like when you start out the first couple of years, you're constantly putting more weight on the bar every week. And after a while, once you get around that intermediate advanced stage, that stops happening. I can remember spending over a year trying to get another 5 pounds on my bench press. Like, there is a level where things are going to slow down. You're going to get diminishing returns. You're going to have to be very, very patient. And you're going to have to understand that everything matters a whole lot more. Your margin for error is significantly smaller. So, Precision Nutrition has this great infographic called The Cost of Getting Lean, and I highly recommend that everybody look at that, because it does vary depending on how lean you want to be, and that applies to how lean you want to look. Like, you can be lean in terms of less body fat, but maybe still not look the way you want to look, and that's something we've hammered on. And Ruby does a great job hammering away at this. Like, you have to build muscle if you want to look lean. You're not going to have.
I just need to inject in this part, because that's the thing. Like, most people, that's the reason you're not seeing results. You can do whatever the hell you want, but if you're not building muscle, you're not going to look lean. And the sad reality is that that is most women, because it
Yeah.
takes discomfort. And I said this in today's reel, actually, in the caption. You can't complain about results that you don't get if you keep skipping the process. I wrote, stop complaining about the results you don't have for the process you aren't willing to accept. You cannot skip the process. Like what I wrote in here is, I want to tone up, shape up my legs, but I don't want them to build too much. I don't want them to get more bulky. My legs are stubborn and squishy and soft. I want more definition, but I don't want them to get bulky. That is why your legs never change shape, because you emotionally respond to your legs. It's tying it back to the whole emotional like theme of this. You're emotionally responding to how your legs are feeling. You're emotionally responding to maybe like what Brandon said before, where you're going to have to eat in a slight surplus to see any changes. Most people have always approached building the wrong way. You don't eat more food and build more muscle. It's the training that does that. The food facilitates your training performance to be at a higher level, so that now you're training. This doesn't mean adding in more training. I'm not saying that. It doesn't mean more and more and more and more and more training. Let's build, 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 build. Now I can feed. No, it
means better training.
It means better training, stronger training. You're recovering faster, so you're able to come back with even more effort the next time, and you're providing the building blocks for that house to be built. But if you're scared of your legs feeling tight, if you're scared of big, full feeling legs, and you complain the second that you can't get your jeans up, you complain the second that you try to wear your work pants, or the second that summer comes along and you can't get your little jean shorts to get up your thighs, well, you're not going to see lean legs either. I remember freaking out with leg extensions because I didn't want bigger quads, and all I felt was like this huge, like my legs were like touching each other, and I was like, ew, my legs are fat. And then I remember when this was when I was past all of that. I remember Luke gave me the most effective HIIT training on the bike. Now this is another emotional thing, because it's a completely different aspect. I felt like my legs were freaking huge just from doing the bike in sprints, because I was on high carbs. I was eating like quite a significant amount of food. No, I was not gaining fat. I was in maintenance, but my sprints was getting a lot of blood volume to my legs, because it's a concentric movement pattern only. You're shuttling not only blood to the legs, but there's the carbs, there's the water. I felt in between, my rest periods were like, I think 3 minutes long, because my sprints were like 60 seconds or whatever on the bike. So it'd be like 60 seconds to 3 minutes, or it would be 90 seconds to 3 minutes, depending. But it was always
brutal.
Yeah. And it was like 6 rounds to 8 rounds of it. It was so brutal. But because I was going really freaking hard on it, what do you expect? It's the same as doing a shit ton of leg extensions. So you can, but the thing is, that's the thing though. Just because my legs felt really full did not mean I was building muscle either, but they felt chunky. If I use the right stimulus, this is where it's like, what do you actually want to get out of it? Because I can get that same feeling from doing a ton of glute thrusts, a ton of booty banded hip thrusts, a ton of whatever you want to add in that is just like fluff work for the glutes.
And none of these provide a stimulus.
Exactly, but you're going to feel it.
Not unless you're very, very deconditioned and like can't walk.
It's going to provide a burn. It's going to provide a pump. It's going to make you feel like it. So it's going to be a feeling stimulus, but it's not going to be a building stimulus. So I feel like that like kind of all ties in to reiterate what you were saying.
There's a level of stimulus that'll bring you out of atrophy to like, okay, you can now function. And that's about as much as they'll provide. That's like rehab stimulus. Like it'll build you back to, I can walk again. It won't build you up to, I have a pretty booty. It won't build you up to like, I like the way my legs look in the mirror. It's interesting because I had a very similar experience with my own legs. Like I just always have had big legs, but they've never been defined. But because they were already big, like I was like, I'm just not gonna really worry too much about it. Like I still train them, and they're still the most important part of the program. But like I never really focused on the quads specifically. I just kind of stayed hip dominant on most of my training, and then I hired a bodybuilding coach, and he put my legs on the back burner. They still grew. But it wasn't until I started actively focusing on my quads that I started to like the way they look. They didn't get, I wouldn't say they got bigger, but they definitely got a better look to them. They look leaner. They look more shapely. They have more definition to them. So like that defined look, that athletic look that you want, because you're like, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. I want to look lean and athletic. I want to look healthy. Yeah, that requires more muscle than you think, and it requires you to train as if you're trying to get big. This is what I tell every female client that I get in here who's trying to do like a physique kind of thing. Because not all of them are. I get a lot of people who are here like, hey, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. But the ones who come in and they're like, I want to look this way. I tell them, all right, you're gonna train as if you're trying to build the biggest legs known to man, and then you're gonna eat this healthy diet, and we're going to put you in, you know, a pretty decent amount of intake. We're not going to make you fat. We're not going to make you skinny. We're just going to very slowly push your calories up a little bit, just a little bit. And but the important bit I want you to take away from that is you're going to train as if you're trying to build the biggest legs known to man. And what you're going to end up with is the prettiest legs you've ever had without them being too big. Like they're just not going to get big. I'm sorry. Unless there are a lot of drugs involved, you're not going to get massive legs out of this. You know, you're not going to accidentally become a an expert NASCAR driver who always wins first because you drove down the block. Like that's the same argument. Like, oh, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. Don't worry, you won't. Even if you train like one, you won't. You won't. Unless you started at 12 and took drugs, you won't.
I actually find that funny because actually there are two ways to kind of say this. There are a lot of women that store a lot of body fat on their legs, which makes it even harder for you guys because
that's me, which is not typical for guys, but like that's where I store my body fat. So sorry, didn't mean to interject. But
no, actually, that would be something I want you to talk on after I finish this because that's really important. I reckon this is what holds a lot of women back because then they don't want to train it because their legs already feel really big and they don't want to grow it even more. But it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's not really growing it more. It's more so let's make it more dense with actual muscle fibers. But at the same time, it's like, what again, what is the result that you want? But the other one, it's funny because Adams is his triceps. He gets told because he's competing in physique, like men's physique, and you want shoulders. You don't really want your arms to outpower your shoulders because that isn't the tapered look that wins physique. So he's got told to not train his arms, just his delts. And the difference you can actually see is enormous. You can easily not train a body part and not grow it. That's the point. Like if you want to actually see definition, you need to train that body part. The fact that his delts have so much more shape now, it's because he's been training it to grow them. And the same with your legs. Like you can spot enhance and you cannot spot reduce, but you're not going to get that leaner look unless you build muscle. And the difference is that he's an enhanced male. The other difference is that females, especially over 40, are the complete opposite of that. Like complete opposite. Even actually, I would argue over 30 because from the age of 20 something, your testosterone starts to reduce. After the age of 40, you have perimenopause symptoms. You can even start at 35. I can't believe I'm saying that now. And I'm like in my 30s. I'm like, holy shit. Like it is so close. I remember talking about this when I was 26. Like, wow. Regardless, it's like perimenopause can start when you're 35 onwards. And all of these things make it even harder for you to build muscle, let alone keep muscle. So you should be doing everything you can to build it. So if you're struggling, just to sum that off, because I want you to talk about that whole leg thing as well. If you're struggling to see the leanness that you want, maybe it's time to do what you haven't been doing, which is to grow to actually get big. But you need to feed that. It's not just training to get big. It's actually fueling yourself enough. And I'm going to say it again, 1,600 calories is not your maintenance.
Amen. Yeah. And I do want to carry this further too. Like, so, okay, you store body fat on your legs. Why wouldn't you want to grow the metabolic machinery that burns more calories, especially there? Like, no, Ruby said it. You can't spot reduce. It's actually like there was some research that showed like you can, but it's on such a small scale that you would never notice it in 100 years. Like you could spot reduce like crazy, and what would happen if you compared two people, one who did and one who didn't, is you wouldn't be able to tell the difference at all unless you had a microscope. So that's a waste of your time. But like she said, you can spot enhance. So you build that muscle, and then when you cut, like, hey, your legs are the same size and they look a lot better, right? But let's carry that a bit further because I tend to work with a demographic that comes in when their days of thinking about abs and legs are behind them. They're currently in the days of like, well, I've got to get ready for my knee replacement. I've got to be able to get up off the floor because I'm 75. Um, I had a lady in here just earlier today. She's 70 years old, and the concern is not I need to lose this belly fat. The concern is I need to be able to maintain my independence. And the cool thing is, if you're training right now to be a mass monster and you're eating the way Ruby's saying, you're feeding yourself, you're fueling yourself enough, one, you won't become a mass monster. You're just going to look good. But two, that's very protective in your old age. Like I can tell when somebody is in their 70s and 80s if they did if they took this kind of approach in their 20s. You can see it. And the longer you do it, the longer you get to keep it. And the easier it is to keep. And so, like, if you build it now so that you don't have to come in and talk to me about getting ready for your knee replacement, so that you don't have to come in and talk about your constant knee pain and your constant hip pain, or that the injury you just had again because you're too frail to withstand, you know, picking up your grandkids, or worse, your purse. Like I've literally seen people tear a rotator cuff reaching behind them in the car to like grab their wallet or something. I don't remember what he was reaching for, but he reached back and pop. All it took was a reach, and I think that guy was in his 40s, maybe his 50s.
That's
But
actually
like,
really important. No, because you mostly get the pulls and the pops outside of the gym. What you do in the
mhm,
gym helps you for outside of the gym. But the
yeah,
leg part, that is your metabolic gold when you age. That is your longevity when you age. So if you care about longevity, you should care about building as much muscle and strength in your legs as possible, because just
yeah.
because you have chunky legs because of fat, that is not going to protect you. You need chunky
I think,
legs because of muscle. But the funny thing is that you don't get chunky legs because of muscle.
yeah. Again, I always say like, what is it? Lifting weights doesn't make women bulky. Cupcakes do. And like, there's a balance. You can put cupcakes in there, but I think it's probably more appropriate to say lifting weights doesn't make women bulky. Your nightly glass of wine does, because that absolutely doesn't help your goals in any way. Whereas cupcakes can be used. But I think some of the women who come in here who have the most regret that I hear, and regret is the word, is they spent their lives trying to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and now they have sarcopenia, and now they have
And more
they
belly
have
fat.
to and more belly fat that they really struggle with, but that's the least of their concerns because their bone density is so low they have to be on medication so they don't break a hip getting out of the car. Like
I would also say
these,
though, but the belly fat is an important thing to consider there, because anything you store around your visceral organs is really bad for health. And that is
it is
because
dangerous.
of a
Yeah,
less of muscle mass. So I would add that to
yeah,
that too.
yeah. Visceral fat is the most dangerous type of fat. So it's like, oh, I've got abs, but it's like out here, like, you've got danger. But yeah, I mean, all of these things add up, especially then you reach that point where it's like, okay, I wish I had the luxury of worrying about how good I looked, because now we're so frail that I'm terrified of injury because of the last break I had, or the last tear, the last loud pop and quick drop. Like, take this seriously now, build muscle now because it's protective later. The bonus is it's just going to make you look the way you want to look, but you're playing the long game because the time is going to pass no matter what you do. You can either waste it or you can invest it.
I like that. You need to wait, like, you need to get real about your actions, your results, I should say. They're shown in your receipts. Show me the receipts. And the
Mhm.
receipts, I mean, what are you buying at the shops? What are your calories? What are your protein intake grams? What are your fruits and veg? What are you doing on a daily basis? What habits are serving you? What habits are taking you away? But you can address those however many fingers I said. There's more, all that you want. None of that is going to stick if you don't do what we mentioned before with tracing, number one, tracing the emotions up the chain to figure out what is the root cause of this, because we need to stop pulling people out from the stream and start figure out why the hell they keep falling in anyway, number one. Number two, you don't know what you don't know. Get yourself a coach. Why is it that you're so willing? Why is it that you're so willing to spend your money on monster drinks every single day, which are $5, $6 sometimes here, if you get them from the gas station? If you get them from Woolies or the supermarket, I should say, they're still $4 or $5. So that is about $35 a week. And then add on the coffees on top of that. I think they're like $5. So that's $35 plus another $35. That's $70 a week on just a monster drink and coffee. You eat out, you buy takeaway every single lunch. That's a salad that you could have easily got for half the price, or a bread roll that you could have easily thrown together. How many times do you eat out? How many times do you drink? How many times do you spend money on stuff that isn't actually moving you forward? And then you complain about the results that you don't have. Stop. Like, I'm trying to say this in the nicest way possible, but stop complaining about the results you don't have if you're directing money in the wrong direction, because you can have results. Anyone can get the results. But where are you investing your resources? And I don't just mean money here. I mean, where are you investing your focus? Let's stop thinking about the energy and the actions, because the energy and actions do not matter if you're not focused where you want to go. You're so focused on what you don't want that you just keep trying to put out fires. If you start focusing
I have a story with that.
We mentioned this in one of the prior episodes. I feel like your story is going to be a really good one to tie this episode up, because I do have another podcast after this. But
did I talk about the skydiver?
I think, did you? I don't know. I don't remember. But we did talk about this in one of the podcast episodes where you mentioned we need to focus on what you actually want, not just focus on what you don't want. And I think you did. And I think you mentioned a client as well, because trying to, like, the more that you focus on your body image, the more that it becomes an issue. The more that you focus, like, my coach said something to me in terms, because he helps me more so in terms of communication styles and helping. Like, I like to talk about body image because I see it a lot, and it's something that I don't even remember how I worked my way through, except the fact that I just stopped body checking. That actually, no, that ties in nicely. I stopped body checking. I stopped focusing on the things I want to change. I started focusing on the things that I like to feel. I got asked this in a call. I wish I recorded the call. I have the transcript from it, but she asked me, how did I just break through all of this? Because the story was so similar. And it was because I had a tough love coach. He literally said, stop focusing on dumb shit. I'm not going to even entertain you talking about XYZ. If it has to do with your body, if it has to do with the scale, he'd never entertained it. He ignored it. So if I said anything, it would get ignored, or he'd say something really blunt, like, stop focusing on dumb shit, this, that, and the other. And that started to rewire where I shift my focus. It's almost like disciplining a dog. You want to, like, ignore the attention-seeking habits of a dog or of a child and start rewarding what they are doing well, because the more that you reward what they're doing well, the more that that's going to, like, I'm not a master of parenting, but I know some, like, I know enough to know what is it that sustains change in kids. And the more that you reward the positive thing, like, for example, you can play your Xbox for even more time, or you get extra bonus time on your Xbox if you do X. Is going to be so much better than you're not gonna have the Xbox now because you did X. What's going to sustain change more? Oh, I get benefits from doing this helpful habit. It becomes something that is more intrinsically rewarding versus something that's coming out. Yeah. Anyway, I just feel like that's a really good add-on there. And if you guys, I don't even know where that came in from and where I was. Oh yeah, because we want to focus on the resources. Yeah, the resources. Yeah. Oh, we mentioned that in the podcast as well.
You get more with honey than vinegar.
the resources, where you direct your resources. Because if you have your focus on where you want to go, your actions are going to align, your energy is going to align. You're going to start realizing what actually lights you up, what makes you feel good, and you're going to start disconnecting from the things that don't. And there was a quote that I saw that reminded me of Adam. I'm sorry, but it was such a good one. I'm going to pull it up because I sent it to him, but it relates to everything else. It says, "How do you know the connection is special? I never have to recharge after spending time with them." And that just, and like that kind of, there's very few people that give me that impact, but there's also very few actions that give you that impact. And if you're always doing draining tasks, what's recharging you? If you're never having self-care, if you're always filling up your calendar with stuff, that is then the stress mode that you're living on, and you're never going to break through anything because you're not giving yourself time to work through the things that are holding you back. Anyway, I'll let you tie it up because I have to get onto a podcast.
Yep. So number one, to sum up some of the things you were saying earlier about like spending money here and there, compliance before complaints. And then number two, body follows the eyes. And that works both literally and figuratively. So there was this is actually a true story of a guy, and it's a sad story, so I'm sorry. But there was a guy who went skydiving, and he went out in the middle of the desert. I mean, it was just the only thing that he had to avoid was a truck. He could land literally anywhere for at least a few miles. Like, he had miles to work with. And so what the instructor told him was like, hey, all you have to do, don't hit the truck. And he was wearing a helmet cam. And when you watch the footage of the dive, his eyes were on the truck the whole time. Like, don't hit the truck, don't hit the truck, don't hit the truck. If I say don't think of a pink elephant, what just pops in your head? Don't think of your right big toe. Don't think of a cheeseburger. Don't. Right? It doesn't matter. I mentioned it. Your eyes are on it. And the body follows the eyes. He hit the truck. He lost a limb. I think he lost his arm, his right arm. He could have landed anywhere. So I want this to be a cautionary tale because this is a universal principle that applies to mindset and habits. If you're focused on the thing you're trying to quit, and you see this in addiction all the time, like the more you say, like, don't do the thing, the more of the behavior you're going to see. Whereas the more you focus down on the things that go well, the more the unwanted behaviors will tend to be choked out by the better behaviors. Focus on the things that are going well and double down on them. When I open a nutrition coaching session with a client, the first question I ask is, what went well and how did you make that happen? I don't ask what sucked, or I don't ask what's the update, because the update is always something. Well, I sucked here. I was bad here. Like, what went well? And I've found that to be a very successful approach. If you want to see results, that would be the best approach for you to take with your own mentality, your own self-talk, and your own focus. When you look in the mirror, for every one thing you're like, oh, I want to get rid of this, and then you grab the thing, right? For every one of those, find at least 3 things you like about your body that you appreciate, something that's gotten better, something that you're thankful for. If you can't find anything, I'm thankful that I'm able to stand up because I have clients who can't. Thankful that I'm able to stand up straight and I'm not in pain here. Like, oh, this shoulder hurts, but this one doesn't. And while this does hurt, it's functional. Whatever you can find it and appreciate it.
We're always, like, if you think of the biases, we have a negativity bias, and the more that you try to figure out what led to you doing things that are well, the more that you focus on, the more that you highlight the things that are going well and then trace it back to what helped that situation, the more that you can repeat the success behaviors. So that's a really good actionable tip for you. I have a couple more that I'm going to just quickly highlight. And if you want a toolkit for this, I have one. It's more related to, actually, it is one you definitely want. So come and inbox me at TransformXRuby. But it's just something that I'll send through. It's around the holiday season, working towards the end of the year, Christmas season, etc. But if X happens, then I will X, because you can, the more that you bring this awareness, like we mentioned, the more that we can start to put things in place so that we don't go to the habits that sabotage us. So if X happens, then I will X. And the other one is, yeah, okay, cool. They say if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. But why the hell would that matter if you're measuring the wrong things? It doesn't matter what you measure. And if you can manage it, if the things that you're measuring are the things that aren't moving you forward, because I can measure the scale, I can measure my pant size, I can measure my anything that isn't related to muscle growth, which is most things, because you can't really measure muscle growth. You can measure things that are a proxy for muscle growth, which is what we want to focus on. And that's exactly what Brandon and I have been speaking about over our podcast episodes. And whatever notes you're taking, can you send me all the ones that you've been taking over the last few episodes? Because we need to start actually using these for future direction, because we have another episode coming up hopefully soon, because we're behind in these. But regardless, when it worked, list the conditions that led to it working. When it didn't, list the conditions, compare and contrast, and then take one tiny tweak, not three, one, and test it, experiment with it. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's an experiment. It doesn't matter if you suck at it, if you fail, if you relapse, don't just give up on it. Keep forcing it. Keep forcing it for at least 2 weeks. And then you can decide. I like to use a 30-day rule for any experiments, because it's always going to be harder at first. So use a 30-day rule. Give it a 30-day experiment. And then the last one, which I want to go back to what you said, 3 things that even went 1% better. Focus on that, especially when you're struggling. But beyond
Any
all,
forward movement is still forward movement.
I think the most important thing, though, is to highlight one promise that you kept to yourself, because it's that matters most. Even if nothing went 1% better, that one thing that you kept to yourself as a promise, which could be the fact that you're stopping that night to reflect, is proof enough that you're moving forward. So
Yeah, that's a tangible. It's worth noting that progress isn't linear, because different factors will progress, different parts will progress while your body isn't. Some things are just laying the groundwork. Generally, habits. If you're stopping to reflect, that's progress. That alone is progress, because the behaviors are what create the body you want. The behaviors create the habits create the outcomes, right? If the behaviors are changing, you're stopping to reflect and check in on things. That's progress. And you don't. I said this to a client today. I feel like it feels a little bit unrelated, but at the same time related. So I'm just going to say it is like, if you only have 30% and you gave 30%, by definition, you gave 100%. So it might be worth being kinder to yourself when you feel like, oh, I don't have it in me. I'm just going to do, this bare minimum workout. Like, okay, cool. Do that. That's a whole lot better than what you would have done 6 months ago.
Okay, I'm going to quickly just highlight that, and then I'll tie it off, because I had this conversation with Adam again. But because he's in comp prep, he got told that he needs to do like 70 to 80% of his usual loads. And he was freaking wrecked. And because of that, he said, oh, training was shit. But he gave his 100%, even though it was the 70 to 80% of what he usually gives. And this is where so many people also get caught up with, I train hard, but I'm not seeing change. Well, yeah, he was training hard, but he was training way nowhere near his potential. But number 2, if that was just a one-off day, he still gave his best, and that still counts. But if it's a continual thing, and that is your version of training hard, that is when your emotions win and your logic loses, and your results suffer from that. So if this episode helped, please reach out to me. Please reach out to Brandon. Like I mentioned, DM me on Instagram if this is something you want the template for, with things that you can act on in order to move forward, because I have some scripts, I have some actionable plans there. Brandon and I still need to work on our little 8-week thing that we want to provide, and something that we want to gift you guys for listening in. But there's been a lot of chaos happening in both of our environments at the moment. But we're going to get back to our little planning, and hopefully we get that up into you soon. And please rate me 5 stars, and I will speak to you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.